Are you ready to become a change maker? Our 48-week postgraduate program in public policy or the PGP may be just the thing for you. This hybrid program is designed to give you both the theoretical foundation and hands-on experience needed to excel in policy making. With a mix of expert-led webinars, in-person workshops, and policy simulation exercises, you'll gain real-world skills along with personalized mentorship. Through our policy programs, we connect good people to good ideas and good networks. Apply now at the link in the description to make an impact.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of All Things Policy. I'm your host Swathi Kalyani, research analyst, and today I have with me Dr. Nitya, head of the Geospatial program at the Takshashila Institution. And today we are going to talk about the China's Mega Dam 2.0 initiative. In December 2024, China's state news agency Xinhua confirmed government's financial approval for the massive hydropower project on the Yarlung Tsangpo. In the recent geospatial newsletter, so you talk about how this is actually a part of China's 14th five-year plan aimed at creating a renewable energy hub in the Ningxi province. So let's get into the questions. And Medong Mega Dam has been described as an engineering marvel, but also a ticking time bomb by downstream nations. What makes this place so controversial? And why should people be paying attention to it?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Swathi, for having me on this discussion. Yes, it is considered one of a riskiest project, especially because of its location and the size. The place where it is proposed is right above India's Arunachal Pradesh, and you can say technically on north of India's Arunachal Pradesh, and where the elevation drops over 2,000 meters. So the water from Yarlung Tsangpo, as you know, the moment it enters into India, it has become Brahmaputra, right? So the water, after it turns from the Great U Bend, it falls steep and the elevation decreases rapidly. So that is why, if anything happens, upfront on the upstream part, it will have a severe impact on the downstream. Second is about the size of the project. The estimated capacity of this project is, almost three times the size of the current world largest Three Gorges Dam, right? If it is expected to produce electricity at that massive scale, and when there is no clarity exist on whether it's going to be a reservoir-based dam or run-of-the-river dam, so this becomes a massive concern if they store huge water on top of India, and then it technically can be used as a weapon against the downstream nations.
So actually, China is no strange to this mega infrastructure projects. As you said, the Three Gorges Dam is already the most famous one. But the Medong Dam, which is like three times bigger, around 60,000 megawatt power generation is what it's aiming at. What are the stakes here? And is it an attempt to surpass past achievements of China itself?
When it comes to the Chinese side, it is clearly, specified it as a project to support their energy goals, especially their mission to get net neutral by 2060. And this electricity generation here in this area can definitely, help them to achieve it. That's how they feel it's a clean and it's renewable energy. So getting it here would actually contribute to their whole of their energy demand. And also, it is specified that this energy could be used for the development of, the landmass around it. If you look at the renewable energy, or even if you look at the larger energy production in China, the spatial distribution largely oriented on the eastern part of it. The western part of it is, something where the energy production is also less, and obviously the human population is also less dense in this region. So by generating more electricity and distributing it for the utilization of people around it can perhaps help them to get more people towards this region and more economic activity, and overall leads to the development of the country as well.
So, the location of this dam, which is near the India China border, actually raises obvious concerns. How much of this project is really about energy, at least according to you, and how much is it about the geopolitical influence?
See, if the project is purely depend on water it is being received at that particular point, I would say this is not going to be the massive project, because the data also indicates the precipitation receives in the entire stretch of Yarlung Tsangpo basin, sub basin, and subsequent places in Siang and then in Brahmaputra basin at large in India has more rainfall than the upstream areas, right? In this case, it is trying to leverage the natural gravity which brings the water in a heavy rate. So the water is likely to flow in this area once it is streamlined as a dam will be much higher, which helps them to get that energy production. But the question is why they want to leverage such a risky opportunity, especially when we know that it will directly impact the downstream countries, right? Especially India is more concerned about it and it's very much close to India. When it comes to the impact, there are not many people residing next to it in the upstream. So it's mostly on the downstream where the huge population is dependent on the larger Brahmaputra. This would be an impact. But the choice of opting for energy versus the true concern of people on downstream, China I think preferred the first one for its own development.
So, could this dam be used as a geopolitical weapon, as some experts argue, because large scale hydropower projects can be leveraged for strategic purpose? So, can this water be used as a tool for influencing its neighbors?
See, in the past, we have noticed the dam breaks have actually caused impact on the downstream. Now, let's get into a situation where the dam construction is genuinely for the electricity generation of China. And during the process, let's believe that some extent of water is being stored there purely for the electricity generation purpose. But then during a time of disaster, if the dam breaks during the construction time or even the completed phase. We have noticed recently where the recent earthquake in Tibet, especially in Shigatse Dingri, has created dam breaks around it, right? The dams are damaged. They acknowledge that possible impact of earthquakes on this dam. Now, since this area where they are planning is actually cutting across a fault line, right? The river actually cut across the fault line, between the two plates. So, if there is a time of disaster, in the time of disaster, if there is a dam break, what will happen and who will bear the responsibility, right? That is why the geopolitical tension rises. That this could be used as a weapon against the downstream because the river flows and it's a vital river for India, especially for the northeast part of India, right? So that is why it has become a concern.
So that's true. Actually, Yarlung Tsangpo is actually in its youthful stage when it flows through it. And in the last year itself, we actually observed around 130 earthquakes with magnitude more than 4. So as it is very powerful and unpredictable river system, one of the river system in the world itself, if something were to go wrong with this dam, what kind of disaster are we looking at? The impact probably.
Okay, in this case, there are three major disaster I could figure out from the literature. Right, the first one is earthquake, as you said. That's pretty common, and I think in last year itself, there were more than 200 earthquakes of various Richter scales are recorded in this area. And once it happens in a serious way, right? The impact is something where we need to observe it for some time, and then we can able to figure out. Earthquake is one, and because of earthquake, a lot of other things triggers. Let's say landslide. We also pointed out in previous edition of Takshashila Geospatial Bulletin how this area is susceptible to landslides. You can say area after U bend is susceptible more to landslide, and the subsequent area on the downstreams are susceptible to landslides. So compared to the mainstream of Yarlung Tsangpo. But what it says is the area which is directly connected to India is likely to have more impact due to landslide, right? So earthquake, landslide, and the third important thing is the flash flood. So flash flood happens, slightly in a different way in Yarlung Tsangpo larger basin, It happens in the mainstream, and after you bend, the chances of having this flash floods are limited because the way the water being collected in the upstream is largely due to glacier melt, and glacier lakes are largely present, right? The moment due to climate change or any other impact, if the dam breaks or if the lake breaks, it eventually feeds to the river and creates flash flood on the stretch. So this is again a different kind of disaster that we can expect. And in addition, there are natural geomorphological, aspects where it will create an impact on the downstream of the rivers when the natural flow is reduced. Right.
It's actually a very good point. I mean, Brahmaputra Basin or the Jamuna Basin, as it's in Bangladesh, is surely more densely populated compared to what Tibet is. So now bringing to the climate change aspect, as you mentioned, the glacial lake outburst, any weather patterns can change and it can be erratic, especially in this region. So any seasonal flow variation in these river can
Right.
have dramatic effects. And so is this a high risk gamble, this dam itself?
It's truly a high risk gamble. The reason for that, as you said, climate impact on this region is also likely to be more increasing every year. Because if you look at the tributaries where the water is being collected for the main river, it originates from different subclimatic zones, right? If you look at the Indian part after the U bend, and especially when it enters India, it's largely having green forest, and then it has very minor classification. What I would say is precisely largely two classification of climates which are close to each other. Whereas on the other front, you have dry, cold conditions exist in some places. When it close to U bend, you have green forest, and with heavy monsoon expected. It contains mostly five and over five climatic conditions, subclimatic conditions in the entire stretch of Yarlung Tsangpo when it is in Tibet. So that is why each of that will have a different impact to climate change, and some can trigger more of glacier melt, and some can trigger more of rain, and in some places it create drought. So all this can leads to a different set of impacts overall. The one who is going to take the toll is the people in the downstream, right? As you said, we are right, more dense people are living in the downstream, so they are going to take the toll. This is one about climate. When it comes to the flow of water, as you said, that will again depend on the source of the water which we get it on the mainstreams, right? So the flow rate again depends on what is actually being received through rain and through other glacier melts, and underground flow and so on. So largely it is a different difficult gamble where is being taken. Indeed, it's high risk, more for the downstream, not for the upstream.
China has been actually notoriously secretive about the details of this project, refusing to share vital water flow data. Bangladesh foreign advisor recently visited the Chinese ministers, and it was promised that the any project on the Medong will not have any effect on Bangladesh. Even the Indian Foreign Secretary met them, and they have promised that there will be a water sharing or data sharing agreements. But why is transparency such a critical issue here, and how does this affect countries like India and Bangladesh? How might it help? Or
I think it is very important to have the transparency at first place. A lot of the speculations could have been avoided if if the kind of project is declared, whether it's a reservoir, as I specified earlier, if there is a clarity on where and what answered, then things would be better. For say, if they specify where this project is likely to take off in Medong County, where exactly it's going to happen. Second is what kind of project it is. Is going to be a massive reservoir to be built by utilizing the canyon, or it's going to be the project in the lower stream utilizing only the natural gravity of and flow of water due to that. So if those data is in addition to data sharing, the data sharing mechanism was there in place earlier, but after the stand-ups and other aspects, the data sharing is also stopped. So there is no MOU exists right now to which requires people to share. Though India was buying data from China earlier about the hydrology and other aspects, because despite having certain chances of measuring this flow and other things from remote sensing, the best way is to measure it on ground, which can precisely tell what is the quantity, quality, and other aspects related to hydrology and meteorology of that region. So for that, we require a true data which is measured on ground, and for that, the data transparency and cooperation is required. In this case, it's all created as a secretive stuff, so that the people can go around and round and think all the possibilities and explore more of things, and then it becomes speculation at times as well. When it comes to the promises, yes, they have promised that this dam won't restrict the flow of water, this dam won't impact the downstream. For India and for Bangladesh, I think Bangladesh is slightly convinced as well. Whereas in India, I think we welcome that promises, but then what we need is actually beyond promises, right? We need the transparency in data and the technical aspects of the project, so that we do have capacity to analyze whether it will create impact or not. If so, what kind of impact it can create, and accordingly, suitable measures can also be taken care. In case if they are adamant to build a project on this critical area. But when that is not in black and white, when that is in gray zone, the genuine response to that will be what we are seeing it from the Indian side right now.
The Himalayas, it is a shared property between India and China, if we could put it. It is actually one of the most seismically active regions on the earth, and it has frequent earthquakes. How does China actually ensure that this colossal structure can withstand these volatile conditions?
See, this is a very important question. Thanks for posting it. But to be very honest, we don't know whether these things have been taken care, right? So, but then, first response from anybody would be like, if anybody goes for this bigger project, the first thing people do is the possibility of resistance for the disaster and so on. But what we have seen recently in the earthquakes, there are certain earthquakes which are bigger, right? It happens not in every year, but it happens once in a while in tens and hundreds of years at times. For those things, everything cannot be taken care and everything cannot be catered. And especially if you store water, something, if we go wildly comparing Three Gorges Dam and this, the water is being stored three times, then imagine the impact, right? Whether the topography would be good enough to store it. It's not a similar topography that we can see it in Three Gorges Dam and here. Here it's more fragile. So in that case, what would be the potential impact? Nobody knows, right? So they may be prepared for a certain level, but then what we are arguing is the place is so critical and it's very difficult to predict the future. And if it happens in a big scale, then it goes beyond all your calculations.
Can countries like India and Bangladesh do anything to push back against this project? I mean, they themselves have a lot of hydropolitical issues within themselves. So, any diplomatic or legal measures that could actually protect this water security?
That's a good thing. That's the ideal thing expected, because when there is a problem to two of the brothers, they probably go together and fight with the person who is creating a problem, right? But then what is actually happening here is the geopolitical situation plays in a different way. I think Bangladesh is not going to come along with us, and rather, Bangladesh is likely to use this as a political, tool to blame India for the dams being constructed in its territory. Bangladesh puts us as an upstream country in this place. Yeah, they're going to blame us on the developments happens, and they get usual motivation from the China as well to do this. In that case, we are going to shout all alone, fight all alone on this case, rather than getting Bangladesh helps to fight together. But we cannot compare the dam which is being planned there versus the dams exist in Indian context. As I have specified in an interview for the Diplomat recently, it's a complete different picture. The one is with the necessity of people living in this region and genuinely monitoring things and then sharing, ready willingness to share data with downstream in case of India exists. Whereas another time, other side, it is more of a purpose which is selfish and then which is eventually can be used as a weapon against the downstream countries. That we have already seen how China has been weaponizing it in Mekong Basin, that we covered earlier in our previous edition of the Takshashila Geospatial Bulletin also. So given all this, it's not fair to compare the dam activities constructed by China and the dam activities being constructed in India, in the upstream areas before it enters into Bangladesh.
With all these risks like environmental, climate, engineering risk, actually geopolitical tensions and seismic threats, do you believe this dam will actually be built, or is it another overambitious project probably that might never come into fruition?
Um, we may come to know about that soon because as it was announced earlier several years ago. If we look at from the historical point of view, earlier it was considered as a diversion project, right? People felt it as a diversion project where the water is likely to be diverted to different part of China. It's going to, it's more like China is going to shut the tap, right? But then later it is revealed in the last 5-year plan stating that they're going to build a dam, right? Now, the recent announcement has taken to the next level. There's some amount of fund allocated. The quantum of fund allocated is more than, I think it is 1 lakh crore or something when it comes to Indian money, right? So all these are in place, and the announcement has happened, but we are not seeing any dam construction in the toe. Obviously, perhaps people will look into the construction in the upstream step by step, and then they'll finally come to the things in the downstream. So right now we are not looking at any visible direct construction activities on this area. But if they are quite serious, if it is things beyond papers, it will definitely come out soon and will come out subsequent things there. But do some experts feel the migration is already happening there? People on the critical areas have moved to other side, but we are not sure about it. We need to use our geospatial tools to see what things are happening, and we are obviously closely monitoring the developments there. And let's wait for some more, probably a year to see if there is any changes happens there.
Thanks for the insights, Nitya. So we'll keep monitoring that. And to our listeners, subscribe to the Takshashila Geospatial Bulletin. Explore more about these initiatives and multiple developments in the Tibet region. And just stay updated with the geospatial insights on our website. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Listeners can get more detail about the article from our geospatial bulletin, as Swathi said, and please do share and take more insights from us, and of course share your views as well. Thank you, Swathi, for having me. It's a pleasure talking to you again.
Thanks, Nitya.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.